The expansion of the Big 12 Conference is finalized as it was announced today. An 8-0 vote sealed the deal. Cincinnati, Central Florida, Houston, and BYU will be joining the fold. BYU's an independent, so they have a little bit more freedom, and they're expected to join in time for the 2023 season. Meanwhile, the other three schools have some legal fine tape they've got to fight through with the AAC, although according to Bob Bowlesby, they're expected to join by no later than July 1st, 2024. My prediction here is they're going to get a hefty buyout from Texas and Oklahoma when those two schools inevitably leave the conference. They're not staying until 2025, folks. It's not happening. And they're due a lot of money when that happens. Up to $150 million is what the reports are. So I would not be surprised if they get that money from Texas, Oklahoma, and turn around and channel some of it to the AAC to fulfill any legal obligations and financial obligations they may have to buy these schools out of their any obligations they may have. Best case scenario here just happened for the Big 12. These were the four right schools to make. And I know some people will come on here and say, well, what about Arkansas? What about Nebraska? What about Notre Dame? What about Texas A&M and Missouri? No, none of the other schools in the other Power 5 conferences are leaving for the Big 12. That's just not happening. I mean, this conference was on shaky footing, and these other conferences much better financially. These schools aren't leaving to go to the Big 12, let alone go back. And before anybody says Notre Dame, that was never going to happen. I mean, anybody that tells you any of these schools would have left or would have left a Power 5 to go to the Big 12 was a diehard fan and living in a pipe dream world. One school I know some people may mention is Boise State, and you do have validity to that. I mean, Boise State has been the preeminent top-of-the-line group of five school. You know, that they've been that way for a long time now. I mean, they are the top dog in terms of the little engine it could schools. But what's costing Boise is their media market size, and that is a major player when it comes to expansion. Trust me, there's a reason Rutgers got a Big Ten invitation. It's not because Rutgers football is this historically great program. In fact, Rutgers football has been pretty much an abomination other than maybe a couple of years under Greg Schiano in his first tenure and then Kyle Flood, but they've been pretty horrific beyond that. But that New York media market was just way too much for the Big Ten to pass up on. And ultimately, it's what cost Boise in getting invites to any of the Power 5 conferences. The Big 12 would have probably been the only one to do so. But you look at the markets they're adding: Cincinnati, Ohio, big media market; Salt Lake City, Utah, big media market; Orlando, Tampa Bay, big media market. You get the point of view. So I don't think Boise's future is in the Mountain West Conference. I'm going to make another video about that, and it does involve the AAC. There's a little bit of a spoiler for you, so stay tuned for that. But you look at these schools, and the biggest thing I want to bring up here is, number one, the fact that the Big 12 Conference will actually have 12 teams again. They haven't had that since the 2010 season, which was right before Colorado and Nebraska jumped ship and started an exodus of schools that we still see to this day. However, the other significant point I want to bring up is now you look at some of the states that this conference are going to have footprints in. They've already got it in Texas. That is well established. But now they're going to have heavy footprints in Ohio and Florida. You look at the top 5 in high school football and where a majority of the top-of-the-line recruits come from. It's Texas, it's Florida, it's Ohio, it's California, and it's Pennsylvania. Those are the most rich recruiting hotbeds in high school sports. And the Big 12 has footprints in 3 of the 5, and you could technically say they've got them in Pennsylvania because West Virginia is close enough. It's a stone's throw away from the PA border. I mean, it borders the state, and they're Morgantown certainly is a stone's throw away from Pittsburgh. They've recruited Pennsylvania very strongly in the past, but for technicality, we're going to say 3 out of 5. Then you look at some of the coaches that they're bringing in right now. I mean, Gus Malzahn in a Big 12 setting, that offense in the Big 12, that is a match made in heaven. Oh, by the way, Gus Malzahn, the only coach to beat Nick Saban 3 times since Saban's been at Alabama. So Big 12's getting themselves a hell of a coach, and that is going to be a perfect marriage right there. I mean, he will flourish in a Big 12 setting, especially now that they're going to be able to go up in Florida and have a much different advantage than they did before. I'm not saying that they are on the same footing as Florida or even Florida State and Miami, but the gap has shrunk significantly. Same goes for Cincinnati. I mean, they're not going to go toe-to-toe with Ohio State. They're never going to be on the same footing, but again, that gap has shrunk quite a bit. And it's not going to be uncommon to see 5-star recruits from Ohio or 5-star recruits from Florida go to these schools now, knowing that they're going to be in a Power 5 conference. They're going to be in a conference where they've got a legitimate chance to play in the FBS playoffs and possibly play for a national title. They didn't have that footing before. So that's not insignificant. BYU, another program, I mean, Salt Lake City market covered, but that's been a traditionally strong program for as long as I followed college football, and that goes back to 1983. And they themselves have a very, very good coach as well. So, you're seeing some nice expansion. All these hires, all these expanded schools will benefit the conference long term. And some interesting storylines are coming out of this. I mean, for West Virginia, they've got to be the happiest school of them all because they now have a natural geographic rival that they can play on a yearly basis. And, they could build that festering hatred that they had with Pitt when the backyard brawl was still around. I mean, Cincinnati to Morgantown, you're looking at 4, maybe 5 hours away. So there's that natural geographic rivalry there as well. So this is a big get for the Big 12. This is like I said, best case scenario. They've reached it. I was completely wrong. I said in a previous video they would not survive without Texas and Oklahoma. And make no mistake, they could have added 10 schools of the group of 6 schools, and they weren't going to replace what Texas and Oklahoma brought prestige-wise, but this was best case they could have done, and I think the conference is going to be just fine. Didn't say that 2 months ago, but they're going to be just fine. Hey, stay tuned to this channel, though. I'm going to be doing a video talking about what could be next for the AAC. I sort of gave you a spoiler at that with Boise State, but stay tuned for that. In the meantime, my name is JP. If you like what you hear here, see what I did there? Please like, share, and subscribe because it does help with the YouTube algorithm, and feel free to make your comments known below. I'll talk to you again soon.